Welcome back to the Red Dice Diaries, and in this RPG Bugbears video I'm going to focus on something that I only really noticed fairly recently, and that's indie game snobbery. Now, it's probably a little bit unfair to actually call it that, since I've noticed this behaviour in lots of other fan communities, both in and outside of the gaming world. You've probably all seen a scenario like this. So some new kind of game, TV series or whatever starts up. It doesn't have much public exposure at first and only a die-hard community of niche fans. It then starts gaining more exposure and more traction and becoming part of the mainstream. At this point there is almost inevitably a backlash from some of the original fans, complaining that people are jumping on the bandwagon, or they attempt to cement their own position as true fans by challenging and ridiculing newcomers who are interested in their thing, whatever it may be. Okay, so how does this apply to indie games? Well, I'm quite a fan of indie or independent games, but if you're rushing to Google thinking, well, exactly what is an indie game, then I'll save you the bother. There's loads of different definitions and confusions over what precisely an indie game is. In fact, if you type it into Google, the first definition starts off by saying, independent video games development is the video game development process of creating indie games. Thanks, Google. In fairness, though, it does later go on to describe indie games as those created by individuals or small teams of developers without significant financial support from established publishers or developers. So that's the sort of definition I'm rolling with for this video. Although there are people out there who think that anything that is more than a couple of hundred words and isn't handwritten on the back of a convention pamphlet is not an indie game, but I'm going to stick with a slightly more sensible definition. To be honest, my real gripe or bugbear isn't with indie games. My real gripe is with the fearful mentality that causes people, and I include myself in this, to lash out at others they perceive as diluting or stealing away their niche product or gaming style that they previously viewed as their own special thing or that's their sole domain. And I'll hold my hands up and admit to falling victim to this myself. As most of you know, I've been a big fan of the Fate system, which you may or may not see as an indie game depending on your point of view. I got on board fairly early and grew to feel a sense of ownership, I suppose, over the system. I groaned inwardly when I saw that Will Wheaton's tabletop channel had brought out a video about Fate, because I, quite wrongly, thought, oh, now we're going to get lots of other people jumping on the bandwagon who wouldn't have given two shits about the system otherwise. But let's just stop, take a deep breath for a moment and think about that. Publishers only release stuff for RPG games if they can afford to do so. More people buying products for a game line means more money coming into that game line and more products being produced for it. It's a fairly simple equation. So why was I worried about other people getting involved in Fate when it would mean a lot more products produced for the game line that I love, especially when a lot of my own videos are designed to help people get into the system in the first place? Well, I think I was worried about it for the same reason that many people in niche communities become worried when their baby hits the mainstream. It's easy when you're in a small community to develop a sort of us versus them mentality. It helps insulate you from people who don't understand or mock your hobby, and it draws you closer together as a community. It's then not easy to accept people who might have previously mocked your passion now getting involved because the mainstreamers green-lit it and said it's okay to now like. And some people do lash out against that. You can see evidence of that in some people who are around during role-playing's formative years, being disdainful of newcomers to the hobby or new ideas in gaming. Now, of course, not all people are like this, but there's also the fear of new ideas and dilution of what made a hobby enjoyable in the first place to contend with. When you throw on top of that the fact that people's definition of certain things within our hobby varies a great deal, it's easy to see how disagreements and factions can develop. I've heard the following phrases a number of times. Oh, such and such isn't a proper role-playing game. Such and such tries to be an indie game, but it's more of a trad game. Oh, if you like hack and slash, then you're not really role-playing. Such and such a game uses X system and it's too restrictive. It should embrace free-form storytelling more. And they're just a few of the phrases that I've heard. But when it comes down to it, the only thing that is truly a fact about people's gaming opinions is that they're just that, opinions. We're not talking about hard, demonstrable scientific facts. We're talking about one person or a group of people liking something that another person doesn't. And unfortunately, rather than concentrating on demonstrating what is great and good about their own system or method of gaming, it's far easier to point out perceived shortfalls and tear down another person's. Take my own misguided fears about Fate. Since Will Wheaton's video and a number of others, there's been a great number of people getting involved in Fate, and that's a good thing. It encourages Evil Hat and more independent producers to take notice of the system and make more cool stuff for it. It also brings fresh perspectives and new players into the game, which is a good thing. Has it diluted my favourite system or made me like it any less? Has it In fact, I've got some great new ideas from newcomers to the system, and any that I don't like, I can simply not use. I don't have to spit my dummy out and try and attempt to rubbish them or tear them down. So I suppose what I'm really trying to say with this video is that a game or a hobby becoming more mainstream shouldn't necessarily be seen as something bad to be mocked or sneered at, but as an opportunity to develop our gaming in ways that we might not have originally considered. Worst case scenario, if you see something develop in your favourite game that you don't like, either ignore it or better yet, change it so it does suit you. It's your game after all. As long as you and your players are having fun, it doesn't matter how niche or how popular your system is, nor what anyone else thinks. So there you go, there's my RPG bugbear about indie game Snobbery. Please, if you've enjoyed this video, click on like and subscribe. I'd also love to see your comments down in the section below to see what you think of this. What have your experiences been with niche games moving into the mainstream, or in-hobby snobbery, if you want to call it that? I'd love to hear what you think. So until I see you next time, take care, and whatever game you're playing, happy gaming to you.